Ladies and gentlemen, good night and welcome. Today we have part 3 in the Kaiso series that is being hosted by DJ Roger De Pisa from Ajax in the Greater Toronto area. Thank you all for joining. As the show progresses, put them in the chat and I will draw Roger's attention to your questions and comments. Roger?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Let me share the screen again, and we can get started. Okay, are you guys seeing the screen? Are you all seeing the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
All right. Okay, so welcome, everyone. For some reason, I'm not seeing the screen properly, but we will see how it goes. All right. So like I said, this is the third in the series, Kaiso. As you guys know, we started looking at the music of the Caribbean. I had started in Guyana, and then I was coming up the Caribbean and ended up at Trinidad. And it was so voluminous that I'm now doing the third in the series. Okay, so again, we're gonna take another dip in the river of music that runs through the Caribbean. But tonight we're focusing on Pan. Okay, and I will talk about Kaiso, the lyrics of the Kaiso and Sweet Pan. The objective, of course, of this presentation that I'm making here is to trace the development of the steel pan, to demonstrate the genius of the early pioneers of the music and the instrument, and to show how pan music has taken calypso to a whole new level, to even a higher level than it was before in terms of artistry and musicality. And we will look specifically at, the Panorama Competition. Okay, so just to tie up or tie back to where we had started this journey as Shrove Tide, which was really the beginning of the mass. And, it was a situation where European people celebrated the 2 days prior to the Lenten season. And of course, the African enslaved workers were also given those 2 days, I guess, to celebrate. And the celebration took the form of masquerade. Okay. In particular, they celebrated the burning and harvesting of the cane, which we came to know as Can Boule or Can Boule. All right, so there was a lot of dancing and singing and clearly mocking of the plantation owners. Okay, so question of the day: what do you think the powers at the time thought about these African celebrations? Anyone? What do you think?
Sure they did not care for these celebrations.
Yes.
History, yeah. I'm sure they probably put obstacles in the way of these celebrations.
In fact, it was a little more than that. Okay, they
Violence.
looked at them with horror and dismay.
Yeah.
Actually, in fact,
And Roger, you should let some of the other participants in the audience share their point of view too.
Oh yes, okay. Anyone else? Anyone else who?
Are you meaning there's another point of view besides mine, Dennis? Jeez, man.
Oh boy.
I think Roger Ahmad has a.
Yeah, Roger.
I was just thinking that at first they probably thought this was harmless, that they were being benevolent and allowing the slave to do this, maybe burn off some energy, some some ill will or something like that, But then, as Vicky said, maybe as it grew and it became more mocking in nature, they probably didn't appreciate it and they have regretted their decision.
And so I will add, Roger, that I think that when the slave owners realized the ratio of slaves to white people there at the time, that they were probably stricken with fear that these slaves outnumbered them so many-fold and were on those 2 days, you know, drinking and dancing and having a good time that could have led to riots and that kind of thing.
Yes, to a large extent, that is true. Okay, in fact, and if I may continue now, Dennis, I can't see people's hands. I can't see anyone. So please feel free to interject and stop me whenever, okay? All right. Yeah, what happened, in fact, coming out of all of this, all right, was that the British government, colonial government, saw it as a threat to public order. And as a consequence, over the period of time, they had many attempts to stop crème brûlée specifically. So in 1881, they tried to ban crème brûlée. In 1883, they banned, drumming. Drumming was banned, okay? And later on in 1884, stick fighting was also banned, okay? So yeah, these celebrations were not looked upon favorably by the British colonial government at the time. All right. Now, the thing about it, Michael, is that African people in the Americas have always used cultural expression as a form of resistance. So in Brazil, okay, as we have here, all right, capoeira was developed, subterfugely, I think that's a word, okay, as a way, as not only a martial art, okay, but it was developed within the context of a dance, all right? And as we know, for those martial artists among us, capoeira is now one of the most deadly martial arts there is. Okay, we had the mocking thing going on here as well during these parties, and eventually that would, evolve into the masquerade where people would mock people in the can-cans, the jamet and all of these kinds of things. Okay, and of course the drumming continued. Why I raised this slide in particular, and this is from one of the previous presentations I gave. We created the limbo in Tobago, okay? And the limbo dance specifically, something, creating space where there was none. Okay, and that really is the African experience in the Americas. You create space where none existed. Okay, so British attempts to ban Kambule, to ban drumming, to ban stick fighting. People ask themselves, well, you want to ban those things? Let's use something else. All right, and as a consequence of those efforts, the Tandu bamboo was, okay, the Tandu bamboo weki are just 3 pieces or pieces of bamboo sticks that people went into the forest, okay, and cut the bamboo. And the beating of the bamboo replaced the beating of the drums. Okay, so yeah, you want to ban drumming? We will use the bamboo instead. So there are 3 pieces, so in the early 1990s up to the end of the 1930s, really, okay, all these street parades were dominated by Tandu bamboo bands, okay? So you had 3 types of Tandu bamboo, the long ones, like what's in this picture here, okay? These served as the bass instruments, I don't know, anybody is familiar with the clave in Cuba? Anybody?
What about it?
You heard about
Yeah.
it?
Mm.
Okay, well, let me just stop this share for a second, all right, so that I can see everybody. Okay, but these sticks here are the clave, okay? It's a sticks with 2 holes, right, that goes through this here is the heart and soul of every single salsa band, okay? It creates the rhythm and everybody, so salsa is, right, and everybody does this. So the tandu bamboo is a similar type of instrument, okay? So, screen 2. So this is what the tandu bamboo sounds like. So I'm gonna play this.
Clear, clear.
Clear? So this is what this tandu bamboo is. You see the fellas beating the sticks? Okay, yeah, so this here is what you know, was what provided the music and the rhythm for people to jump up in the streets right up to the late 1930s. Okay, so in 1941, something strange happened in Port of Spain. Okay, and if I were to read out of this book called The Parade of the Carnivals, which is this book I have in my hand here. Okay, it says that musically, Port of Spain seemed to be unique in that a new kind of musical accompaniment appeared to have grown popular among revelers. Sign of this had been seen in the Carnival of 1937, but this year it looked well established and overwhelming. So much so that the Trinidad Guardian of Carnival Tuesday, February 25th, said of the Juve celebrations in Port of Spain, the music in the majority of cases was furbished by the biscuit drum and dustbin orchestras, the performers of which exhibited a degree of skill and brought forth the rhythm which particularly suited the masqueraders or the maskers. There was no doubt that it suited the maskers. The music of these biscuit drums and dustbin orchestras that the reporter spoke about. Had the reporter looked well, he would have seen paint cans too. And he would have seen the beating of naked steel, that is, steel on steel, usually something like an iron bar being knocked against a motorcar brake drum. So bands like Alexander Ragtime from Newtown in the West and Helyard from the heart of town, and also like the one at John John in East Port of Spain, these were among the early steel bands, leaving tandu bamboo behind. Okay, so the music was changing. If the reporter had looked well into the John John band, he might have seen an 11-year-old boy called Winston Simon enjoying himself with his own little steel drum on which it is said he was producing notes. As small as he was already experimenting and giving steel drums the notes of the musical scale. And there was also a 15-year-old youth whom the reporter might have written about had he known about him. His band was formed just a little earlier with the name Oval Boys, since this youth who formed the band lived opposite the Queen's Park Oval on Chagarite Road. The band was beginning to call itself Invaders after another Hollywood film, another Hollywood war film. The youth was Ellie Manette, and he was also experimenting with the steel drum. Okay, or maybe it could be called steel pan, right? So you got experimentation happening early 1941, okay, right? Men leaving Tandu Bamboo behind, basically. And, you know, a new rhythm is taking over the streets. And as you can see, Winston's Pre-Simon was 11 years old. Ellie Manette was 15 years old. So basically, we're talking about children. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So let me come back to this. Okay. So these fellas lived in at least Pre-Simon lived in Laventille. Vicky, this is how Laventille looks today, right? So this is the area where Pre-Simon would have grown up. Okay, it's located on the outskirts of the city of Port of Spain on the east end, and has always been, you know, a poor and depressed area where people basically live on top of each other. You would notice the similarity to the favelas in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Okay, so Laventille itself got its name, okay, because of the French word Lavonte, sorry. Okay, why? Because it has been said that you know, the northeast trade wind blows towards this part of the island before it reaches Port of Spain. Hence the name La Vantie. Okay, with, you know, La Vantie in French means the vent. Okay. All right, so let's just have a look at, anybody has anything to say? Dennis, can you tell me? I can't see anyone.
Okay, no one else, but I have a question. You said Laventille means repent?
No, the vent.
Oh, the vent. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I
So
can
like
see Roger
Laventana.
has his hand raised.
Yeah, DP. So so you're saying in the late 1930s or 1940s, the steel pan as we know it hasn't made an appearance yet.
It was now coming. It was now coming
out. That's
right?
surprising.
Fellas were using biscuit drums.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. I didn't know that. I thought it would have gone back a bit further than that.
There's a little more surprise to come, right? In this video here. All right, from Ellie Manette. So it's gonna start in a second.
Started from a little kid. I was playing trash can and buckets and paint tins, and we call it silly names, kettle drum and doo-doop and boom and all sorts of funny names they called them at the time. And going, you know, the rhythm all the time. No kind of melodious sound coming out of them except rhythmic patterns. And from 1935, 1937, 38, around 1938 I came into the picture, 37, 38, because I saw some older guys playing the trash cans, and I was very intrigued with it all day. So I left school and I went on my father's backyard and I got one of the little trash cans and I started to beat on it. And by beating on it, I could observe I'm getting some of the same kind of rhythm as the other band was getting up the road. And I continue on this today now. All the bands around Port of Spain begin to play trash cans. Trash can. And one gentleman, I understand, I was not there, but I learned, and I always support that statement, that a guy by the name of Winston Simon is the first person that plays melody that comes from one of those cans. It was not what we have today, but was smaller, but he was playing a distinct melody. And the drums at the time was convex. What we have today is a basin. You know, the surface of the drum is a basin. But before that basin, the drums were pushed from one side. Push them up like this. And instead of looking at a basin like this, it was like that. The top of the drum was surface, this kind of globe. And what they did at the time, I would do also. With that globe, we'll take boom handles and they will dent the top like that. And wherever you dent, you'll get a little song in there. And I saw another guy playing a melody also on the same kind of a top. And it was driving me crazy because they were getting the melody and I couldn't get it. So I said, how come they could get a melody on those convex and I can't do it? I get it in all kind of crazy way. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to sync the drum. And instead of putting a convex and a little dimple, I put a concave with a hump. So the concave, when you push the hump up, you could hit on the hump and control it. So I did that in 1941. And it started from there. And I had a very famous drum, Trinidad knows about it. I have called it a very silly name. I call it the Barracuda. And Barracuda is such a bad fish. And my drum at the time was the baddest drum in Port of Spain. So I call it the Barracuda. So they beat me up one night and took my drum away in Port of Spain. Some other bigger, older band beat me up in Duke Street and took my drum away, 1945. So then I said I had no drums to play. So I wanted a drum to play. So that's how I managed to come with a 55 gallon, 46. No disputing of the fact. Eddie Manette built the first 55 gallon drum of a musical instrument. It was crude. It was crude. You didn't know what you're doing to control the tones, but it was there. And the band began to take shape. The Teal band began to, and then it began to take shape, so the government began to realize that the boys are doing something. So they wanted to send us to England to show this new instrument off. So they called a proper musician in to direct us what to do. So they took us to London with the direction of a professor they called Lieutenant Griffith, a band director, and he taught us all about chromatics and harmonics and this and that and whatnot. And by the time I came back from England in 1952, my creation really began. Because I then become knowledgeable about what music terminology is and how to obtain certain depth and range. Come back from England with that in my mind, and I went like wildfire. It's something that there's sensitivity that you have to have. What do you see? How you interpret it? How you strike it? Hand and mind, the coordination, like a painter. Picasso, painting in a dream. You see that way. In other words about it, what do you see as a vision? What do you see? What do you hear? How do you make that song what you want to hear? How? And all with hammers. And no keys to tighten. It just hammers. Ball peen of all different sizes and shapes. And you have to observe the metal to know what area you have to strike to create patterns. You manipulate the steel from raw metal hard as that. You manipulate that steel so it begins to respond. And it begins to respond and vibrate. And when the drums begin to vibrate, then you said, well, let me control it. Control the vibration in a different way. And that is not an easy task. It's the hardest education that anybody will ever learn, to be a great pan tuner. I work with scientists, engineers, physicists, chemists, metallurgists all around the country. And they said to me, it is the hardest thing that I've ever observed. But to become a creator, you have to design, one. You have to have notation placement, volume of notes, throat length, determination, what area will give you depth of sound, or pitch height, what resonator length will give you to accommodate that song that you imagine. What is the notation and the harmonic relation that go on a note that respond to each other. All these are things that, and not only that, the side of the drum has certain sound. And you have to relate the pitches on top to relate to the side. So all this is a work of a genius in a way. How do you figure it out? And everything I figured out was trial and error. I wrote a song of my life. And I said, I always knew in my heart one day that my work would find its way. I could not tell you how. There was no one there for me to show the way. But I figured it out. I figured it all through for all of you to know to see today. My time in my involvement of 75 years of knocking on cans, it has not been wasted because college kids all around is adapting to it. All I know that I had the vision to see these drums and I fabricated them, hand and mind, put them into practice. Now all I want to do is to pass this skill on to young people, so they'll ultimately take it and make it better. Because what I have today, it might be good, but as a perfectionist, it's not good enough.
DP,
Okay,
DP,
yeah.
you have questions? We will go with Orson first, and then Peter Khan has a comment, and we'll go from there.
But before we go to the question, if I have one quick comment I'd like to make. These fellas were geniuses, you know. If you really think about it, to take a
Okay.
trash can and, as he said, determination to work 75 years to make this better. Okay, so yes, Orson.
Yeah, you know, in the United States now, probably in all the big cities, a lot of the schools have steel pans. Even in Cincinnati, there are several schools that have steel orchestras. So I was just curious about what is happening in Trinidad, because in Trinidad, typically
Yeah,
people were self-taught, right? Or they would
yes.
teach each other. But are there like schools like
They have some major schools in Trinidad, I will tell you. Because I was surprised going by my friends, you know, they were taking their kids to pan lessons, you know, in different places. And they would have like established as a panyard, a sort of school for young kids coming up. PK?
A couple
PK, before I jump in, Peter, PK had his hand up.
The real PK.
Oh,
Yeah,
Just one comment and then a second comment. I remember when we were going to Boys RC school on an Ash Wednesday, the teacher would say, did anybody see anybody pushing pans across the stage at Skinner Park? And if any youngster was seen and reported, that youngster got licks that day. I'm not sure if any of you guys remember that.
Yeah.
All right. So
I want
coming
to
around
address that. I want to address that in a second after we finish talking.
Right. So coming around to DP's question now, if there's schools where you can go and learn. I remember there's pan pipers in St. Augustine, and then all of the established steel orchestras have youth arms and whatever it is. But it's gotten to the stage now where it's part of the course when you go into a primary school, like how you would learn to use the recorder, you learn to beat the pan. So my two daughters, they went to primary school, a private primary school, and they were taught to beat the pan. They went to high school, St. Joseph Convent in St. Joseph. They were in the school band, and they were beating pan. So this is now into mainstream. It's now mainstream. That's my comment.
Okay. So before I go Radford, Peter, and then Radford.
No, I actually, I thought when Dennis said PK, he was talking about me. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Go ahead, Radford.
In fact, around carnival time,
so Radford, if you could speak a little closer to your mic, because I think we're getting some feedback.
Okay. What I'm saying is that there's a competition around carnival time for schools in Trinidad. A steel pan. I remember going to a school, St. Augustine girls. They have their own panyard and their own pan side, right at this compound itself. And there are many schools like that, okay, that have their own pan. So it's not just associated with a band like Despas, etc. Pan is big in schools. Okay.
Okay, Peter.
That's all I have to say.
Well, going back to what PK was saying, that there was a time when the steel bands were a very violent group of people. I mean, they had, my mom used to tell me about clashes with this band meeting that band on Frederick Street, and they just seen blades flying and people with. So there was a time when it was steel bands were associated with violence. But what I really wanted to say, I know Peter Wola had some personal contact with Ellie Manette, and I was wondering if there's something he might want to share.
You know, his audio, the little video we saw by that DP showed covers the personal you know, stories that I've heard from him you know, the one-on-one. The thing that, the one point I would make though is, you know, Ellie actually, because I think he migrated to the US and when he did, and his association with the Norrells, you know, but he was also curious to find out why, the sort of the science behind what he was doing, because remember what they were doing was all trial and error. But he didn't, so when he got that chance at in Morgantown, I think it's West Virginia University, he got professors to study what he was doing. So, and then the one thing that I think really separates him from most people who made the instrument is the fact he chose to share his knowledge, and I always, you know, give him kudos for doing that. But another point I'd like to make is, though he's sort of the face of the modern steel band, there were a lot of guys doing innovations in Trinidad at the same time. You know, if you were to do another lecture, you know, the south of the island had quite a few innovators in the steel pan that don't get as much recognition as they should. So I'll just.
Excellent point, Peter. And then I'll need to continue. You have your hand raised.
No, that was my. Let me just take it down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, DP.
Okay.
Let me just put out two names there now. Nerlin Tate, a South an early South pioneer, and Bobby Muhammad.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, so let me come back to this. All right. So this was 1939, 1940, when these guys were still youths. Okay, but curiously, what happened next was World War I. Come on. Oops. There we go.
World War II, boy.
Sorry, World War II. Thank you for that correction. And so the carnival was banned between 1942 and 1944. Okay. And it was a real struggle to survive in Trinidad. I think Peter alluded to the fact that, you know, during that time, the steel band orchestra was associated with Bajanism. Okay. The fighting part of it comes from a long tradition associated with, you know, fighting at, you know, celebratory times. So it happened when two bands met. Okay. But most importantly, because of the break, it gave the fellas time to experiment with the instrument, you know, the quality of the sound and these kind of things. All right. So, you know, it was during that time that Elie Manet, you know, sunk the pan from its convex shape to its concave shape. And you also had, as both Peter Holder and Dennison remarked, a whole heap of other people. So Bertie Marshall was there, Anthony Williams was there. Okay, you know, experimenting. I think we lose sight of that, and we think that we don't think much about it. But you know, these fellas put in the work. All right, you'd observe that I have some photographs as well. This is the USS Missouri, which is parked in the Gulf of Paria, just outside the port of Port of Spain. The bottom line is that this is the ship that the Japanese surrendered on, actually, in World War II, where they signed the Article of Surrender on the USS Missouri. There it is, parked outside of Port of Spain. And on the right-hand side, you will see some bombers, some TBF-1 Avengers. Okay, and they were practicing torpedo runs in the Gulf of Paria because, you know, the German U-boats used to harass shipping across the Atlantic, and Trinidad was particularly susceptible to bombing from those U-ships. So that was going on between 1942 and 1945. But then 1945 came and Germany fell in May of 1945, and as a consequence, May the 8th and May the 9th, men come out to party. Okay, it turned into nothing short of carnival, right? On May the 8th and May the 9th, all right, on VE Day, Victory in Europe. The same thing happened for VJ Day, Victory in Japan. Okay, for the second time, carnival fever gripped the country, right? 3 times in a year, Carnival Day, when Germany fell and when Japan fell, you know, so much so that Kitchener composed Life for Klee. I guess you know the Calypso, what? Chinese never had a VJ Day, yeah? To describe what happened. And of course, because men were out on the streets, you know, the steel drum was, you know, was king. All right. So I have here a little thing about Life for Klee, and it struck me that it was really commemorating the victory of how, well, it talked about how the Chinese Trinidadians came out in mass and force, you know, on the street of Port of Spain, because of course, you know, China was under the thumb of Japan during that period. So if we go through it, all right, I'll just play a verse of Life for Klee here for you.
This I want to mention a joke with a Chinese lion. Big men frightened like fire, thinking is a true lion come from China. Just by a mistake the lion grown, John dropped his bass on a saxophone. People got misled, there was a Chinese playing mass in a lion head. Leo, come down here, like Fugli, Lao Xie. Leo, oh God, come down here, Chinese never had a VJ Leo. Leo, oh God, come down here, like Ilia, Lao Xie. Leo, come down here.
Yeah, so this Calypso talks about how people in the street, you know, are very surprised about, you know, this Chinese lion they see, you know, jumping up in the street and so on. Okay, and the rest of the Calypso is pretty much like that. Okay, so that was 1945, and then of course came 1946. All right, so just reading a paragraph again from the same book. It says, John Steel Band, which was now calling itself Destination Tokyo, and you all may know about Carib Tokyo, actually the same set of people. After the war film of that name, so Vicky, many of the steel bands assume the names of, desperados, renegades, and so on, after wartime movies or cowboy movies and so on. Okay, so they had its players on the street and showing off its melodious ping pong. The ping pong being the pan that actually played the tune. Okay, but that carnival, it had lost to Johannesburg Fascinators. That was another band, okay? So it had lost to Johannesburg Fascinators, the boy who said who was said to have developed the ping pong, Winston Simon. Incidentally, Johannesburg Fascinators were playing Juju Warriors, as you see here, that year. And when coming around the savannah, perhaps going to competition, they noticed the governor and party looking out from the government house, which is the president's house now. Okay, so they were coming around the savannah, playing this thing, and they noticed these dignitaries waiting, looking on from the president or the governor's house at the time. All right. And now check this piece of opportunism. Okay, Winston stopped for a moment and turning to the governor and his party, he beat out a few tunes on his ping pong with great artistry, sending the Juju warriors jumping while in the streets. Okay, the Port of Spain Gazette of the following day, Wednesday, March the 6th, 1946, records that the player rendered Ave Maria, Life-O-Clee, which we just heard, and God Save the King. Okay, so the thing is, when Spree Simon played these three songs in front of the governor, okay, that seminal act demonstrated basically that not only was he a quick thinker, but he had the wisdom to seize the moment to promote his invention in front of top dignitaries in the island at the time. Okay, and he did this not for himself really, because nobody really know even today who Winston Simon is. Okay, he did this basically to promote the instrument that he was, you know, instrumental in helping to develop. So here is what that song Ave Maria might have sounded like. Okay, clearly this is a new version, a 2000 something version, but here's what they may have heard. Okay, so very impressive. They were impressed. Yes, and of course, you know, I was able to source, you know, what the Johannesburg Fascinators sounded like a few years later. Okay, and this is how they sounded like. This is a live recording of the streets of Port of Spain in 1956.
Hey,
okay,
DP,
yes.
DP, when you go, give us a little minute more now of the music.
Oh, you want some more of the music? Sure, certainly. Okay, it's a lot of stuff, right? So I'll bear that in mind as we proceed, okay? If you don't mind. All right. So this is Johannesburg Fascinators on the street of Port of Spain in 1956, the band that Winston Simon was a part of. This is how they're coming down the streets of Port of Spain. Okay, so that was Johannesburg Fascinators. Okay, so that moment where, you know, he caught the attention of the governor and those dignitaries and so on was to pay off big time later on, because in 1951 there was something called Operation Britain. Okay, now they had formed a steel band association, some of the fellas who were involved in these various steel bands, okay? And apparently, you know, they were trying to raise funds for Spree Simon, who apparently was accidentally shot. Okay, but during that time, they realized that they had an opportunity to attend some music festival in Britain called the Festival of Britain in August of 1951. Apparently this celebration, this festival comes around once every 100 years. So the fellas figured out, well, okay, you know, let us send a steel band. And so they formed a whole series of committees or subcommittees to raise funds, okay? And they got a whole heap of support from the then governor, Hubert Ranch, You know, Albert Gomes, who was a major politician, the Bermudez Biscuit Company supplied them with these drums. You know, they even got support from the mayor of New York, right? They got some support from a guy who made all these suits for them. Okay, some of the top musicians or the top bandmen of the day, Spree Simon, Ellie Manette, a whole heap of others. Okay, and so they were able to form this group called TASPO. As a matter of fact, I think the governor, and you know, in that movie we saw just now with Ellie Manette, he said they got some guidance from a guy by the name of Lieutenant Griffith. Well, in fact, he came from the police. Okay, he was the police's music director. And so the governor arranged for tutelage of these bandmen by this guy here. He's standing here in the hat. Okay, and if I were to play, you know, what happened? Okay, this is a clip from the BBC, actually. Steve Sterling Betancourt was also a member.
Is at the festival hall, and you see the people there, they're standing around. This is Nathaniel Griffith, the bandmaster. This one is me here. Well, that day it was very funny because we purposely did not paint the drums. They leave it all rusty and we're looking like dustbin, you know. And we set up and, you know, and people start to laugh, you know. They giggling. What these black men gonna do with these old dustbins? When we start up, everybody was shocked. They were looking to see where the music coming from and saying, wow, this is black magic. And we had the West Indians who were there, they were dancing, and it was very nice. And when we finished playing, they want to know where the music coming from. Have they got a recording below there or something like that? And it was fantastic.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I could stop the share, or should I proceed?
Looks like you could proceed, Roger.
Okay, excellent. All right. So that happened in 1951. Okay. Yeah. So during all of that time and later, they were to produce all of these different types of steel pans. Okay. So a typical schematic of a steel pan, of course, you have the belly, you have the playing surface, you have the skirt around the pan, and of course the pan stand. Okay, basically these are the various songs that you get out of the instrument. So a tenor would sound like this. Okay, a double tenor would sound like this. A double second would sound like this. A double guitar would sound like this. Tenor bass would sound like this. A sixth bass would sound like this. Now you have the electric pan, which is a pretty new invention, considering. and our brother Baden Copeland, his brother, who is in UE, Professor Brian Copeland, developed this G pan or Genesis pan, and here's how this sounds. So if I could ask Peter Holder, which one of these pans, you know, you play, or if you play many of them?
So I can play a tenor, a double second, and then my favorite is which you don't have here, is the triple guitar. So
okay.
I wanted to make one comment between the sound, you know, that the sound of the drums we heard when the guy was talking, Mr. Betancourt, I think is his name. So there's a definite difference in the sound between what you just demonstrated and what we heard in that. And there's a key difference. One is the notes in the previous one is it only has what's called a fundamental of the note. And then the modern instrument has the note plus the harmonics. And that's what makes that difference in the sound, just in case anybody had that question. So and that is attributable to Bertie Marshall was the guy to introduce harmonics to the individual notes to give you that kind of ringy tone that we now consider to be the normal tone of a steel drum. So.
What I find interesting is that you know, for a lot of that time, you know, guys used to tune the pans by ear. You know, there was none of these tuning forks and other things. You know, in the early days, I don't know if now things are different. I would imagine that they are. You know.
Well, so typically before, up till recently, they use what's called a strobe, and Peterson makes a strobe. But now, if you go around to the individual tuners, you'll see them using a strobe application on their iPad to tune or their laptop. So,
well, everybody has moved into the 21st century, I imagine. You know. Yeah. Okay. So one of these things that, we have two participants who have raised their hands. So let me just stop the share and we'll move into the next part of it in a few minutes. Orson?
So what exactly is an EPAN? Can you explain that in greater
Electronic pan.
I know, but what is an electronic pan?
So I don't know, maybe Peter, any of the Peters.
You know, that is basically a synthesizer that uses the layout of a tenor pan to be able to access the sounds of a synthesizer. So for example, you know, you demonstrated only the pan sound on that particular, on the EPAN. But if you wanted to play an organ or a saxophone, but you knew how to play the pan, you could just dial in the saxophone, and then you could play a saxophone sound using the notes of a steel pan. So it's basically a synthesizer that uses a steel pan as the input.
Okay.
Interesting.
Dave?
I think Orson had his hand up before. Go ahead, Orson.
No, he asked his question. I think.
Well, my question was, what's the difference between the E-pan and the G-pan? Because I know they said Copeland brother developed it, but I'm not familiar with what is it.
I think Peter's
FMHPD and G.
No, so back in I think it's probably in the early 2000s. So a regular garbage can, or the 55-gallon drum, which is about 27 inches in diameter, the sides are crimped on to the top. So as you could imagine, it's a mechanically bound. So if you hammer in that to tune it, there are times where you're going to loosen that bind, so you get notes that buzz. So then there's also, if you look at the tenor pan, for example, it can go from low C, middle C, about 3 octaves up. So they wanted to expand the range, and they wanted also to have some more space to be able to make tuning easier, because not every tuner is skillful enough to tune some of the lower notes on the tenor pan. C, typically from below D. If it's D, the C sharp, that's C, and some guys even go to the B. So Panyard out of Ohio were the first to say, you know what, we don't want to be limited by the space of the 27-inch drum. So they came up with a loop, a circle, piece of metal. They weld the top on and then they weld the side on. And that gave them the area they want. And then Trinidad took it further to make it a little bigger so they could do the note from the low G, the G below middle C. But I think they use Genesis as I think it's mostly a market employee, to be honest. But the main difference is it's not a regular 27-inch drum, and the top and the sides are welded on. So
okay, thank you, Peter. Roger, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and for your information, I had it up before Dave. Okay?
Oh, okay. Thanks for that bit of information.
Yeah. But Dave, Gora's always so bold-faced. But anyway, I guess my question actually.
Just remember who is the older guy.
Yeah, by about what, 5 years. But anyways, kind of Peter got into it. I was thinking about the metallurgy of pan, when it was created from the oil drum. So I'm thinking, manufacturing of the oil drums must have been fairly consistent, the thickness of the steel and all that sort of stuff, for those guys to, tune those. And then the question Peter kind of got into it a little bit too is about evolution now. As we move forward and you creating these instruments, the requirements is not just pick up any old steel drum that from oil and use it, right? So now, like Peter's saying, they're making surfaces and skirts that are not oil drum 55-gallon drums. They're making them out of other things, right? So that was just I had a question, but Peter answered it. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, so Debbie, one quick thing, do not feel badly if you hear people talking about A and B sharp, and because I myself, I'm not into that too much. I don't think many people. The curious thing is though that most pan men back in the day couldn't read music. You see, right? So everything was by ear, pretty much. All right.
Who's Debbie?
Vicky, I meant.
That's all right. I figured it was me. It was the only female name, so I figured it had to be me. So.
I looked around for Debbie. I can't figure out who's Debbie yet.
Okay, well, Dos is here and it's not Dos. So.
Right. I myself was looking for this Debbie, but
All right, let's push on. Guys.
We tried to figure out Dos' middle name, but it's okay. Go with that.
All right.
Dos is my middle name.
Oh, all right, Betty.
Okay, so you're kind of going to switch gears a little bit, and now you guys could come up and come up for a little air and let loose. All right, because we're going to the Panorama celebration. Okay, all right. Now the Panorama thing is really where the musicality and all of this stuff, the creativity, the genius of our music men really come out. This is the largest steel pan competition in the world. Every year you have pretty much between 60 and 80 bands competing. Okay, and each band, supposedly, I'm talking about big bands because you also have smaller bands, but each band should have anywhere between 75 to 100 musicians. I don't know where I got this 200 number from, but that's what it is. So, and they usually play a popular calypso or song for that year. All right, so here we have one of the first songs that I chose. Now I apologize if in going through this you don't hear your favorite Panorama song. Okay, but I will play the calypso, and in this case it's 1978. Sparrow had gone to Festac, which was the African Festival of Art and Culture in Nigeria the year before, in 1997, and he made a song called Natasha, okay, or Dudu Yemi, and it was played. It was played by Trinidad Tisero Stalif. All right, so we'll hear a verse of the song first, and then we'll hear the Panorama song.
Natasha from Nigeria didn't have a chance. She just had to dance with the freedom of my rhythm. In she sexy body, she then said to me, your music is sweet, I really love the beat. It's the living thing, makes me feel to sing. Olori egbe ho makurere oni o. O si wa so good do hear me. O digba mori o. O yina lafia ba wa sere oni o. Hey!
So please don't get upset with me if my Yoruba translation isn't on the mark, but I wrote it as I heard it. So so this is Stalip's version of Dudu Yemi. Okay, good. All right, moving on.
Why does that bring back memories of car swine?
Oh, I have no idea. Right? This year was the symbol, okay, for Festac 1997. Okay. You had a whole heap of people from all over the world. People like Gilberto Gil from Brazil, huge bossa nova guy. Sparrow, of course, Le Ballet Africans, I think they're from the Congo. Maria Makiba from South Africa, and so on. All of these people performed at Festac. So much so that Sparrow was given an honorary chiefship, I suppose. Okay, so he had the title Chief Omowale of Ikoyo. All right. So there's a piece of history on the side there for you guys. All right. Moving on. We will now look at Scrunter. You guys remember Woman on the Bass?
Oh boy. That's a boss of a tune.
Boss of a tune. True story. True story. Okay, so this is 1980. Trinidad All Stars played Woman on the Bass. In fact, Scrunter sang this calypso called Woman on the Bass. What happened the previous year? In 1997, Scrunter was in the well, before someone was saying something. Someone.
Yeah, 79.
Sorry, in 1979. Sorry. Okay, in 1979, the Panmen were upset because, of course, the government, they had, usual bacchanal. The government couldn't pay them fees or whatever, so they decided to boycott the Panorama. Right now, Despers apparently broke ranks and decided to, go to the Savannah nonetheless. All right, and they played Symphony in G. Okay, and the band, for the first time ever, featured a woman playing the bass, and the woman was named Annie Lopez. There she is, right there, playing the bass. So when Scrunter saw this, he decided that he has to record this piece of history, and that is what this whole Woman on the Bass is about. Okay, first time ever. So Scrunter's song is like this. You guys know it?
I was standing by the grandstand up in the savannah, digging this Indian girl, beating bass band, coming up in that spot. With symphony in G, or in bike like Bradley, make the spectators leave the stand and just run out to the band while she play. The crowd shout and say, we want the woman and the bass. We want the woman and the bass. We want the woman and the bass.
So, you know, people still still party to this song. You know, this is the pan version of it. I think they've replayed it very slowly, okay, to really bring out the melody. But this is the first place. They placed first in the competition that year in 1980, playing this song. Okay, so that was a bit of the performance of Trinidad All Stars in 1980. By the way, is the video coming through okay on your end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
All right.
And that
What's
was
that?
Catelli, right?
Yeah. Well, Catelli Trinidad All Stars. Yes. Right. They subsequently dropped the Catelli. Okay. Yeah. So moving on. All right. Despots. Okay. Cannot have a song without a carnival without despots. Yes. A thing on Panorama. All right. And of course, in 1982, this too was a seminal song. All right. You guys know Lord Nelson are going and party tonight.
I have a neighbor who has a wife, don't care she no way. I overheard them having a fight just the other day. She grumbling how she is in the house all the bloody time. And all he doing is dressing nice and going out on lime. She said you could get next now, I ain't care. I'm going to do up me hair and fix up myself just right, cause I'm going to get down tonight. I'm going and party tonight. I'm going and party tonight. I'm going where the bed swinging. Don't vex if you see me whining. I'm going and party tonight. I'm going and party tonight.
Check my head now.
Oh Lord.
Partying.
So Vicky, one of the things about this whole, where's Vicky? There she is. Okay, one of the things about this Panorama situation, okay, is that these steel pans come out from particular neighborhoods, particular communities. Okay, so it's a very tribal thing. All right. So the people of Port of Spain, different areas. If you're in the west, you would support phase 2 or invaders. If you're in the east of Port of Spain, maybe Tokyo or if you're in the center of Port of Spain by Laventille, John, you're supporting Desperados or Renegades or whomever. Very tribal. If you're in San Fernando, where we are from, we have our South Pans, you know, right? Fontclair and Hatters and all of these things. So at this competition now, it's rivalry, you see, right? So that kind of sets me up for what comes next with Desperados. Desperados is a fantastic Panorama side, right? But you know, people have their built-in biases when they're performing. So anyways, this song that was played here, are going to party tonight, they played in 1982, right? So what happens when they started to play was in fact so Vicky and the group, right? What you gotta recognize is not just playing the calypso as it is. Okay, these arrangers for these steel bands, okay, put their own spin on the music. Okay, so you notice that Despers has a very full and rich song, almost like fine wine, really. When you think about it. Yes, very bubbly, very soulful, actually. Right? Some people in the arrangements, each song is 10 minutes long, so they have to create a whole heap of things. And when I play for you, Fontclair, okay, I want you to, my interpretation of what it is they had played. Okay, I've put it on there. All right, so so next up we have, okay, is Ian here? Ian Mohan? No? Okay, so I'm sorry he had to miss out on this, because I played this specifically for him. Carita Banca. Yeah. Anybody wishes to explain to Vicky what a tabanca is? You know what a tabanca is, Vicky?
That's Peter Can.
Peter Can, no, apparently.
I need some explanation too.
Is it describing the first picture of the guy looking into the can?
No. Well,
Okay.
yes, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
You know, when somebody leaves you, you go into a deep depression. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can't stop thinking about this person. You're kind of walking aimlessly and so on and so forth. That is what we call a tabanca in English terms. Yes.
A serious case of love sickness.
Love sickness.
Very serious case.
Right. So this guy.
Explanation, DP.
Yes, well, I try to be very astute in my description.
Very good, very good.
Yes. The other thing that is also noteworthy is that everybody participates in Carnival and Trinidad society in general. Okay. So the guy who actually sing this song is from, a Syrian background. Okay. Right. We call him the Mighty Trini. All right. So here we go. His wife apparently had left him because he wanted to go outside and roam. Okay, so I'll play his video. So yeah, you see him, totally
he's lovesick for her food.
That's right. For her curry,
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Not for her.
Yeah, not for her. But interestingly, he also incorporates some Indian birds. So gobar, okay, is cow dung, okay, and gar is Dave. You want to explain what gar is for her?
Yeah, gar literally is my ass. So it's good.
he has tabanca in his gar.
When you say it's a gar, it's a real ass. A-R-S-E. So when like hot hunter burning my gar. My gar is like, on the exit, is pepper twice.
Burning
when it goes in and when it comes back out.
In a good way, I take it.
Yeah. So he incorporates an Indian rhythm in this song here. You would have heard. So here is All Stars performance of this song. In fact, they placed fourth with this song in the competition. All right. So here we go. So that was Carita Banca by the Mighty Trini. He also had another great song you guys would remember, Sailing on the Boat. If Trinidad is a ship, he will sail on it, sink or float. You guys remember that one? Okay, no response. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Dave remembers.
Yes, we remember that song. Yep.
We were shaking our heads.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, remember I can't see you guys, right? So, you know.
In that one panorama with that DP.
Huh? What's the one
Did they win
panorama?
panorama with sailing?
No, I think Pandemonium played Sailing on the Boat. I think they came in third or fourth or something with that song. Okay. Next up we have. Oops. Okay, let me go down here. Marvelous song by Kitchener, who is the grandmaster of the boss of steel band music. Okay, he writes, or most of the calypsos that he became famous for in the latter part of his career were done specifically for the steel pan. Okay, so most years people would have played one of his songs. Okay, so Renegades, who are located in the middle of Port of Spain, more or less. Okay, one of the oldest steel bands and probably one of the most winning steel bands, played his song. So here's what his songs pan in A minor. Songs like this.
They say to me they want a musical change in pan. Well, I didn't tell them yes, but I didn't tell them no. I say, well, gentlemen, I'm gonna do the best I can. As long as you challenge me, well, I'm going to have a go. They all indicated that they were getting bored, and they will appreciate something new. So I thought it best to change to the minor chord to see really who is who. Big band, Mookie on the tenor. Big band, bringing out the minor. Big band, up come the professor. Big band, to add to the fire. Big band, calling on Bradley. Big band, to challenge Beverly. Big band, which means Desperado. Big band, go answer Tokyo. You go hear pan in A minor. With them steel band from all over. You're gonna hear them on the battlefield. You're going through a test. You're gonna hear them on the pass, burning the grass. Big band.
And here is the pan version of this song by Amoko Renegades. Okay. All right. Was that Peter?
Goat.
Goat, the greatest.
Agreed.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. All right. But she is also one of the GOATs, the greatest of all times as well. This person coming up here, Denise Plummer, you know, and in 1988, she had a big hit song called Woman is Boss. So Vicky, this one is for you. All right. Yes, so here's what it is.
DP. Can you
One
put that
second.
on hold for a minute?
Sure, certainly. You want me to
I
come
think
back out?
we should also be telling Vicky as we're going through the different steel bands is pay attention to the different styles of music. How, for example, when you were listening to Despas, it was a really melodious song with a heavy line, while Renegades have a very high front line. So each individual arranger and steel band side has its own identity. So you could listen to the pan and say, okay, that is Renegades or that is a Jitsamaru.
Yeah. By the way, did you guys see Jitsamaru in the Renegades video? He was there. Yeah. So phase 2, as well, as you will hear, is a totally different style from all the others. Okay, that's a great point, Larry. So let's hear a little more of
before you go, I see Austin hand up.
Okay, Austin.
So, you know, I'm struck by the bands that you show, highly male dominated. And most of the stuff that I've seen recently on the internet, there seemed to be a lot more gender diversity. So I guess I don't know if it's painting I guess it's painting a historical picture of what the bands looked like back then. But I didn't want to point out that now it seems like there's a lot more women.
Oh yeah. You remember the stigma that was associated with steel bandsmen being ruffians, being bad men. So people really didn't want their girl children associating with these guys, right? And I mean that kind of attitude went on way into the 70s, right? When we were in high school, right?
Can I interject? I mean, it goes even deeper than that. I mean, look on this call here. How many of you guys can play?
There we go.
My mother found out I was playing. That was the end of my playing career.
Yeah.
So let me give you a story about one of my schoolmates. We used to go to common entrance class, and he used to break away and go by Hatters and beat pan, and then come back just in time. A couple of times his father catch him and well bossy tail. Ken Fillmore was that guy. Because we all went to government school together.
And for Vicky, Ken Fillmore is one of the top steel band, or was one of the top steel bandsmen in Trinidad, from where we live in San Fernando, as Larry was explaining.
Internationally.
And he used to get beaten by his dad because he went to play pan. Okay, Radford, quickly.
Not only do you have more women playing nowadays, but you also have young kids playing in some nowadays. So it's wide open. It's not just men alone.
Yeah. And if you think about where this came out from, that is a remarkable thing. Dave?
So was there a class? I mean, you, Larry had mentioned that this sounds like this young man was from a relatively affluent family and that wasn't really allowed to, he had to sneak away. So was there a class difference, like who was considered the people that were played steel drums? Were they looked down upon by upper class? So you don't want your daughter to date a steel drum player, and you don't want your son to become one.
Right.
Got
and
it.
so
All part of colonialism.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and so Vicky, what I want you to realize is that tonight we're getting a history lesson like we never got before.
No, this is fantastic. Now, and I won't listen to steel drums ever the same. Again,
so,
I won't.
Yeah, I wish we had history teachers who would have done something like this, taking a theme. We would have been engaged in our own history.
Absolutely. Yeah. I doubt steel drums would have come up in my education, but that would have been awesome if it did.
Dave,
Yeah.
you had your hand. I still have about 4 more songs I want to play. Okay, it's 9:40, so.
But I was just going to add that the fact that I actually lived in Marbella, that was considered to be, you know, in my teenage years, and also that point, that was considered to be the, you know, the city that never slept. One place that we were considered not to be allowed to go to, even whatever age, was the Panyard, because we thought that was where all the, not just the ruffians, but I would like to pass by there and hear the music. But even if you walk down home, you would be considered to say, well, you were doing something else. Even if it meant that you were saying that they found out that you were drinking in a rum shop. But it's just not that you weren't by the Panyard, because they say that is where all the, you know, the riffraffs were and in Marbella, you know, but it has changed, thankfully. So that's great.
Okay. All right. So if nobody else,
was it something, was it?
Michael, you had a question?
I went through Fres about 5-10 years before you guys. There was a steel band behind my house in Sprinterstown that we heard every night, but it was also the question for me to try to even go there to listen to them.
Yes.
But when I went to UE, I was in Jamaica. I was in that steel band.
Okay.
And we went all over Jamaica beating fun. That was so lovely. And when I came back to Trinidad, it was out of fun again. So I never did concert like that. But I went all over Jamaica and I really enjoyed it.
Okay, excellent. All right, let me push on. You're listening to Woman is Boss, okay, by Denise Plummer. Okay, there we go.
A woman's place was always in the home, while she husband went outside and roam. Since the beginning of time, we standing in line, taking we grind, following behind. Now we woman have changed because without remorse, woman is boss. When it comes to caring, sharing and achieving, woman is boss.
Okay, and now for the phase 2 version, phase 2 from the west end of Port of Spain.
Hey, Roger, before you jump into that, I think you should, I'd like to just interject. So
certainly,
the composer of the song is 2 people, is Denise Plummer and Len Bugsy Sharp.
Yes.
Len Bugsy Sharp is the protege of someone who was the first person to compose his own composition to be played in Panorama. And Bugsy Sharp actually has followed that theme throughout Panorama. Up to now, you've played a calypso by a calypsonian that was played by the steel band. This is the first one you're going to play where the composition is actually by the arranger of the steel band. So I just wanted to put that in.
Okay, thank you. So let's do this. Let's listen to phase 2 Pan Groove coming out of, come on. So following up on that, we have what I consider to be one of the greatest performance in Panorama. For me personally, okay, the year was 1990. That was 31 years ago. And, you know, this performance still gives me goosebumps. Even though Ken Fillmore, who Larry was referring to as the guy who was being beaten by his dad for going to listen to pan music during lunchtime, comes from our area. I think, you know, he was one of the most foremost pan arrangers in Trinidad. Sadly, he got in an accident and was killed in 2018. Okay, really, really nice guy. The song is called Pan by Storm. He himself wrote this song, and it was performed by a guy by the name of Designer, a young guy. Okay, here's how that song goes.
We have a great opportunity right there. Taking pan all over the world. Show every man, woman, boy, and girl our talent and our dedication. We'll have them jumping from now till dawn. By storm, cultural extravaganza. Pan by storm, music to make you feel better. Great, take it up to the limit. Higher height, pan by storm.
That was number one, guys.
Okay, so now we will listen to the pan version of this song. Okay, and a storm, this is hurricane, the one that blew down Mississippi some time ago. Katrina, yes. As it was coming over the Caribbean, I've sort of superimposed it on a pan. But in any case, what Fillmore did with the pan arrangement was, I believe, in my opinion, was focus on the storm, okay, rather than the niceties of the song itself. So think of you being in a storm, you know, the storm is approaching and so on and so on. That is the sense of the arrangement. At least for me, that's what that's what I got out of this particular song. So let's listen for a few minutes and hear what's going on. Yes, anyways, that was hectic.
That was intense.
It was intense. And I think that was what was meant to be the purpose of this song. One quick tidbit. When Abu Bakr did the coup in Trinidad in 1990, this was the performance that heralded, he opened the coup with on TV. Okay, so they played this entire performance, and then the next thing you saw was Abu Bakr announcing to the world, basically, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago has fallen. Right? He has effectively taken the country by storm. Wasn't you had a question?
So did they win?
Nope.
No,
they didn't win.
They didn't. They didn't.
You
Right?
can do a whole segment on the greatest robberies in Panorama. This is one of them.
Okay. Is it an anti-South Trinidad thing?
Probably.
It is.
Probably.
Definitely.
Like I was saying,
after Guinness went in town, it took years for Hatters to come back and route.
Yeah, so it's we probably go a little after 10, guys, if you don't mind. I have about 2 more pan sides to play. Okay.
That's when they sang the column. So they cheat. You want to see the score sheet.
Yeah, okay. So let me
The next cheat was fire.
Fire down below.
Okay.
Maestro, maestro.
All right. Okay, so next up is the Bees Melody, which you guys know, right? Vicky doesn't, but is like I said, Kitchen.
This is Sweet Pan Boy.
Yeah, Kitchener is the guy, who wrote music for Pan. And this is his song, one of his beautiful songs called The Bees Melody. All right? He was going up a mountain and he was attacked by some killer bees. And this is what happened.
Climbing up a mountain, high above the sea, I find myself approaching a hive killer bee. Climbing up a mountain, high above the sea, I find myself disturbing a hive killer bee. They bite me on me chin, bite me on me hand. The noise that they making, it sound like steel band. Because of my love for music, I refuse to run. But the bees were not sympathetic, they sting me for fun.
Boom, boom, killer bee bites me, that killer bee stings me, killer bee dress. Boom, boom,
oh God,
killer bee chokes me, that killer bee chokes me, all over my head.
Well, I'm feeling the pain, but I'm getting a vibe in the brain. Mama, yo, I start to dance, I start to prance, because the buzzing of the bee formed this beautiful melody. You see,
this melody.
And here is the Pan performance of the same song. Okay, so that was the Bees Melody by the Lord Kitchener, played by Amoko Renegades. Okay, we have 2 more coming up and then we'll close it off. Okay, cannot leave without playing Dust in My Face, because this steel band side, Vicky, came from the eastern side of Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, now the powerhouses of steel band really, as we were talking just now, are from the main city of Port of Spain and San Fernando. Okay, so it took everybody by surprise when in 1992 this steel band side from the east came and won the competition, playing one of of Kitchener's song Symphony in G. Okay, so the following year, David Rudder here wrote a calypso saying how it, because this thing is a musical war. Okay, and of course Exodus was high. He said to kick some dust in the face. All right, because the savannah, which is where this thing is held, is oftentimes a very dusty place, as you can see here. All right, so here is the song, Dust in the Face. Lyrics. So everybody's shocked. Oh, boom.
Oh, boom. I fell a ball out like sprang a line. Oh, boom. It was a man from a big steel band. Shot called. I fell a stand up and start to cuss. How come? They get the first prize to Exodus. Well, they come from the east and they play like they're mad and they wheel and they tumble. And when the dust done play and the marks declare, big men start to grumble. If you love Kitchener, start to make me money man. He said they can't catch me, so next year Panorama. Tell them boys they have to bend for the supper. We coming and it's do. Hey, when you see we come down, tell us war declaring the tongue. It's dust in the face. It will be dust in the face. Guns will be blasting for sure in this musical war. It's dust in the face. I tell you, dust in the face. I'm telling you, we're looking for fight. It's trouble tonight. We're feeling alright. There's a Pangman war. Yes, the brothers, we come out for war. To settle our score. The tenor sword off, so it's booyaka, booyaka. Hey, mama, dust. In the face is dust. In the face is dust. In the face is dust, dust, dust. Hey. Ba-da-ba-dum-be. Bidi-bidi-dum-be.
Okay, and this is Exodus's performance of this song. you know, I was probably one of those people in the audience there jumping up to this song when it was played live in 1993. Okay. All right. I know you guys, it's late, you guys.
Before you
Yeah.
go on, you know, you pulled a fast one on us on that. You know, you give Exodus the billing, but you played All Stars too.
No.
Yep. The end part is All Stars.
No.
Absolutely. The yellow pants with the US.
Okay,
I was
okay.
there live.
You were there live as well. Okay, well, you know, the video I got it from would have done something like that. You know? All right. Okay.
Also, when you were playing the one with Kitchener, you didn't let him run go with the bees.
I had to cut up the video because each song with Vicky is 10 minutes long. Okay, so I'm just trying to get 2 or so minutes out of each performance. You're heading out, Denison. We'll see you. I have one more song before you go home.
Yeah,
right?
Roger.
Yes.
It is obvious that you've put a lot of time and thought into this. On behalf of the boys, I want to say thank you. I know how hard it is to just get the words of a song. You get the words, you get the actual song, you get some photos, and then you get the pan version. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent.
But before you go, okay, I just have this one song I want to play for you. If you give me 2 minutes,
yes.
Okay, and then you could head off, okay? Because this one is just for you, okay? And you know it. You know it. Let me see how I am going forward on this. Come on. I need to get a space. There we go. Come on. Okay, here we go. We're not going home tonight. So this is our last song.
The big plan was to invade a party. Right there, the plan, the strategy to capture the territory, moving to achieve their goal. They advance in combat style. When they got there, the soldiers went wild. They're singing, no, we ain't going home. We ain't leaving. No, we ain't going home. 'Cause we feel that we can fret all night. We ain't going home. Fret all day. We ain't going home. Music right. We ain't going home. So we'll go tonight. 'Cause the music just have we hype and ready to mash up the tongue and blow up the city. No, we ain't going home. We ain't leaving. No, we ain't going home. We ain't leaving tonight. Lord, watch it.
And the pan version. With good desperados. close off, really this is genius when you really think about it. You know, because all of these people were inventors, were innovators, were musicians, were pan tuners, were arrangers, were leaders of hundreds of men and women, you know, were pioneers. So I think, you know, we as Trinidadians owe these people a whole heap of gratitude for the beautiful and creative music that they have given to us over all of these years. Okay? And I would just like to thank everyone for, you know, paying attention and being here to share this with okay? And
thank you very much, DP. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, thanks, DP.
Very nice, very nice.
DP, cheers.
Thank you, brother.
Well,
All right.
it's after 10 o'clock.
All right, next week, brothers.
All right.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yes.
Vicky, thanks for showing up.
Funnel shape base pan is showing our last one. You know anything about that?
Yeah, that's an invention
rocket
of
pan.
Rudolph Charles. That's the rocket pan.
Rocket pan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never saw those before. That's crazy.
Yeah, they've had them for years, and they still continue to use them.
All right.
I think I was in the Panorama when they first showed up. Okay, guys. Thank you all so very much. And we will see you guys soon.
Let me just make a comment about next week. Right.
Certainly.
So next week, in the interest of time, I'll just make a short announcement. I am going to send us a link for people to look at a video, a movie, right? That I'd like you all to share with your family or look at it together. It's called The Living Soil. The Living Soil. And I will send a few questions just for you to think of. The video itself is an hour long, but it was a movie that was shown. But let's leave it at that. And I will send a few guidelines for you to look at. And we'll have a little discussion next week. We're coming back to the planet Earth and the environment. But thank you again, DP. This is fantastic, man.
We're coming back down to earth, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
All right.
Take care. See you guys. Good night.
Good night.